Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Todd Fernandez with Climate Crisis Policy and I'll be your host today. We've come a long way since July 1st and our team and network is hard at work on a variety of fronts. We're very close to finalizing a climate bill package of about 10 bills, which we will then advocate for together across the country via our Adopted District campaign. These bills span regenerative farming, planting 1 billion trees, restoring wetlands, creating a big job corps for those efforts, protecting forests internationally, banning hydrofluorocarbons, fracking, toxic pesticides and plastics, and stopping big ag mergers and large confined animal feeding operations. These have a myriad of climate, environmental, and other benefits and serve as a great starting point for our core elements of a more comprehensive legislative agenda. Most importantly, this package and our effort unites movements that alone do not have the political power needed for victory, but which together could defeat the triumvirate of big oil, big ag, and big pharma. This is a David versus Goliath battle, as we all know. So it's a strategic and ethical imperative to get ready now for the historical opportunity we will hopefully have next year to save our planet. We must unite to fight and win. And that means emergency organizing now to meet the moment. I am constantly overwhelmed by this overtaking, I have to admit, while also being inspired by the unity already unfolding here. We have a wonderful array of organizations represented in this work, from local chapters of 350 and Climate Reality and Unitarian Universalist and Project Drawdown, and key partners like Family Farm Action Alliance, Center for Earth Ethics, Center for Biological Diversity, Mighty Earth, and more. We're also well connected to the leading groups behind all the bills, like NRDC, Environmental Investigation Agency, and Food and Water Action. We're also actively expanding by building partners with other networks, like People's Action, which has affiliations in rural areas nationwide. And we're talking with the March for Science again next week. And Climate Reality members are working to engage their leadership to join the Adopted District throughout their vast network. Fingers crossed there. So if you're with a major group, please start that conversation internally and let's see where those lead. You never know until you ask. And let's invite them not only to join our activity, but also to share their plans and strategy for 2021. We also have a great team engaged to manage the Adopted District effort, which we'll discuss after the main presentations, with over 40 districts in 16 states already adopted. And the lead groups on bills are also giving us top 10 targets to pursue. So that'll give us a group of hopefully around 100 by the time we're done. So the plan now is to launch this effort with the package this month in September, aiming to contact about 100 representatives over Climate Week, which starts on September 20th. We'll cover this in more detail later, but for now, please take a look at the vote count spreadsheet listing all the co-sponsors of each bill to see what your representative has endorsed so far. I'll walk you through that in a minute. And then contact their office to get the name and email of their legislative director. The email inviting them to co-sponsor the package will be ready in the next week or so to send out. Please consider adopting your district if you've not yet. I'll be doing mine, Representative Espaillat in New York City, who I first contacted in 2017 about the OFF Act. We also have Rep. Tonko in New York and Rep. Jeffries, who may be the next Speaker of the House. So all outreach helps move the dial. So please join this effort to engage. In 2018, I lobbied Representative Castor of Tampa extensively, and she ended up being the chair of the House Climate Crisis Select Committee. So you never know who you're reaching out to. We also have great teams working on the policy review of the House Climate Crisis Action Plan and the Senate's new report. Those teams are busy now and will be reporting back in October at these general meetings as we identify what's good, bad, and missing from the DNC's plans and to prepare for our pointed advocacy going into 2021. We also have a great faith effort led by Corinna Gore and Nancy Lawrence. Their next meeting is September 16th from 12 to 1:15. And our marketing team led by Brenna Cohen, formerly with Patagonia, and Joshua Chafee with NBC, and Jonathan Brady, a marketing professional, is well underway, gearing up to contact leading marketing firms who have already demonstrated their interest in pro bono work for the Sustainable Development Goals and climate advocacy. So we have strong leads there. We need that industry to join the effort to promote climate solutions on a more massive scale, commensurate with the emergency. as part of our help, as part of helping us to push Congress to action and prepare society for the transition ahead. We will need massive support to win next year. So the question I keep asking myself is, are we ready? Is the climate movement or society as a whole ready to engage the greatest battle of all time to save our planet and reclaim our democracy? As I've mentioned before, I was involved in the push for comprehensive immigration reform under Obama. There was an excellent effort coordinated by a nationwide coalition, Reform Immigration for America, that was all connected to the state coalitions. They had massive marches on DC, a fast that went on for a long time on the Capitol lawn. And they had a bill that gave amnesty to almost 10 million undocumented people that passed the Senate. So I say, are we ready like that for our push in 2021? I can't say that I feel that we are, unfortunately, and I wish I could, but I can't. And so this is why we're doing what we are doing, our small part to try to link interest groups and civil society more broadly together, to be prepared to speak and act with one voice, to have a real hope for substantive victories that can reverse the runaway greenhouse gas trajectory already causing horrible devastation. To be really ready, we need an upfront agreement on policy demands. We need a network of communication teams. We need a forward-facing national coalition that is inclusive and transparent, where the countless groups can join and find direction and leadership.
Hello, this is Laura.
We need infrastructure, staffing, and legislative strategy plans agreed to.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, okay, we're gonna need to mute somebody, Greg. Please
I'm
mute yourself.
great. I'm great. I'm looking forward to getting started and getting all this stuff over with.
All right, Greg, we need to mute everyone, please, and then unmute me again, if you can.
Okay. Hold on.
All right.
Unmute yourself, Todd.
Okay, did it.
Okay.
Sorry about that, folks. Let's see. So as I was saying, to be really ready, we need an upfront agreement on policy demands. We need a network of communications teams. We need a forward-facing national coalition that is inclusive and transparent, where the countless groups can join and find direction and leadership. We need infrastructure, staffing, and legislative strategy plans agreed to by all the leading bill sponsors. Will there be one bill that unifies many interests, or will they segment this, dividing our potential power? What is the plan next year? There are efforts at organizing being led by the Working Families Party with Sunrise and Sierra Club and many alliances, which have just launched the Thrive resolution you may be hearing about. And the Democrats in Congress have stepped up considerably with their new reports and engagement of stakeholders. But these are politically centered to some extent with all the corresponding issues there. And I'm just gonna say it, I am frankly concerned that the plan to save Earth will end up in the crosshairs of a larger political battle. In my opinion, we need civil society working together independently from the political parties. And while we can't do this alone, we can help push the idea and help bring parties together to discuss it. As we roll out the climate package and adopted district this month, we'll start to discuss the broader movement strategy for next year. It may be that we can host a 2-day conference in November, inviting the key players to speak to this and hopefully coordinate across the various initiatives, coalitions, and beyond, and to the civil society arena that is not yet engaged on climate, but which has huge capacity. This is the big quest and a conversation to be continued. Today, we're excited to add environmental justice and just transition bills to our discussion. These are a core element in the policy digest and part of our work all last year. And on this front, I'll be introducing shortly our speaker for the day, who is a little bit delayed. He's actually working on the rollout of the Thrive resolution tomorrow. Anthony Rogers Wright from Climate Justice Alliance, who will be discussing the Climate Equity Act and the Environmental Justice for All Act. I'll introduce Anthony a little bit better when he arrives. We were gonna have him up first and he's gonna be about 20 minutes late. So We're going to ad lib a little bit on that. But Anthony is a real tour de force, not only in organizing, but also on policy. And I love talking with him and hearing his deep understanding on so many fronts. So I just found out a few minutes ago that we were going to have a little bit of a switch in our schedule. So I'm completely going to ad lib for the next few minutes while we wait for Anthony to arrive. And we'll start by talking a little bit about the adopted district. And then I'll invite some of the other team members who are here to, where's the chat? More. Is the chat not enabled? I don't see it enabled.
It is,
Oh, here,
it is, Todd.
Oh, there it is. Oh, here's the chat. Okay, I'm going to put something in the chat. I'm going to invite everyone to please open that document. This is the list of all the bills and all the Congress people that have co-sponsored a bill. And I'm going to screen share my page that shows this document, so we can look at it together. Here across the top, you can see the bills. We have the legacy bills, which are the OFF Act and the Green New Deal. And those co-sponsors, 99 people co-sponsored the Green New Deal, and 53 on the OFF Act, which is really far more comprehensive than any bill that we have in play right now, but has not been refiled. Those that sponsored the Green New Deal resolution, those should be easy targets for the entire package, in my opinion. So that's always a good indication of where people stand. And then if you scroll across the top, you'll see all of our bills. The Break Free from Plastics Pollution bill has 71 co-sponsors. I think these numbers have gone up, actually. This is about a month old. The refrigeration hydrofluorocarbon bills has only 28, but they are bipartisan. The pesticides bill is brand new. It has only 8 co-sponsors. And if you go across all the farm bills, you can see those have 10, 8, 10, 13. Again, a little bit dated. I've updated these on our bill summary. And then the fracking ban has 19. And then the Polluter Welfare Act, which is the elimination of all the subsidies, looks like it has 11. Then these other items are not yet on our package. But if you can see, somebody who sponsored the Carbon and Dividend Act, there's 81 sponsors of that. You can start to get the idea. So if you scroll down on this document over here, you'll see all the Congress people. It's not working for me. It's working, but it doesn't show very well how it's scrolling down. So scroll down and find your person. You can hit Control F if you want, and that'll bring us, you can type in Espaillat. There it is. Type in your guy's name or lady's name, and you'll see. And here I have Representative Espaillat showing up, and he sponsored the OFF Act, the Green New Deal resolution, the plastics bill, the pesticides bill already. He's not on any of the farm bills, it doesn't look like, and he's not on the fracking ban yet. And then right below this, you see Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Let's see if I can get this, whose name happens to flow right there. And you can see what bills she sponsored. So here it looks like we haven't gotten to her on the farm bills either, and the pesticides bill. And so obviously she's gonna sponsor, I would imagine, she's gonna be willing and happy to sponsor all of those bills. But this is where you start. So if everyone on the call can please look up your representative and considering adopting your district. We're gonna have, it's not that hard, and we're gonna have the email to send out in the next week. As I said, it's almost finished. We're waiting a few pieces. And the email is very simple and says, please just sponsor these bills. And then it lists the 10 bills like we have it in the summary of our, of all the bills, that big document with all the content about the bills. And I've just been adding the NGO contacts and the lead bill sponsor staff contacts to that list. And we almost have that complete for all of our bills. As you know, we're just now talking about the environmental justice bills, and the Climate Equity Act, which we'll be talking about, has not been filed yet, although it's been in our digest since last year, and there was a big push a PR push about it recently, because it's AOC and Senator Harris that are leading on that bill. But it hasn't been filed yet. So if it's not filed, we can't obviously include it in the package. The same is true of the forestry bill, which is the one that bans import of goods from forests that have been illegally destroyed around the globe. So that's a very important bill that we've been working on with Environmental Investigation Agency, and they're working to get that bill filed now, thanks to our collaboration. And hopefully that'll be filed by Climate Week, and we'll be able to include that in the package. And it seems like there was one other bill that's escaping me at the moment that's in our discussion package that hasn't been filed yet. So we'll see where we end up in the next couple of weeks with the final list. It'll be about 10 bills. And I'm hoping we can get the Environmental Justice for All Act included in there. And we'll be discussing that today. As you know, there was a, let's see if I have that. I don't know if I can do these at the same time. There is a document for you to, maybe somebody could put that in the thing if I can't find it while I'm talking. There's a document for you to indicate your support of the bill package. Here it comes. Let's see if I can go to that. I can't, oh, here we go. The chat, where can I get to the chat again? And people have been responding to that, the poll on the package of bills. It looks good. I haven't opened it up recently, the results, but if I can figure out how to get into, I'm gonna stop the share, go back to the chat, here we are. And I'm gonna put in, this is the document where you can express your support for the various pieces of legislation that are in the package. So I'm gonna ask you to please fill that out. It has the 10 bills we've been looking at, and once we've discussed in the next week, today and then over the next week, the environmental justice bills, we'll include those in this poll as well. The poll's been going well, and it has pretty much all the bills have over 80, mostly 90% support. There's one person who's voted no across the board out of about 30. And then there's one no on the fracking bill. But I think we're close enough to a modified consensus that these bills can be in our package. And I just want to reiterate that everyone who's adopting a district is welcome, is encouraged, frankly, to discuss this legislation with your local group and to use that as an opportunity to have that policy discussion, just like we've been doing, to draw people more in depth into these core elements of any comprehensive bill. And so that gives you an opportunity to get deeper and more substantive engagement in that policy, and that leads to a stronger commitment to actually passing these bills. So, and if there are bills that you have problems with or that you oppose and you are an adopted district leader or you're willing to start reaching your representatives, then please let me know. And let's talk about that and try to work through that in advance. So far, I haven't heard any those kinds of what we would normally call blocking concerns in a consensus model, other than that one person. So if you're actively going to be involved in this and you have any concerns about any of the individual bills, please let me know and we'll try to work through those and see if we can't find resolution there, which is really what it's all about. Let's see, it's 12:24. How we doing? Anthony's still not here, Greg?
No, not here yet.
No worries.
Yeah.
All right, I haven't seen him any later emails, so we'll see. Let's see, Rachel I know has joined us. Rachel, we're killing time a little bit. Well, not, because I was gonna do this stuff after Anthony's presentation. But so we're doing it before. I just covered the adopted district. I guess we could post again the link to adopt your district. Somebody has that handy. Let me see, I have all this stuff. And here's another document that has everything. So if you're ever looking for the meeting times and the registration links, for the bill summaries, for joining the adopted district or joining a policy sector, viewing previous meetings on YouTube, etc. This one document that I just posted there has all of that, and we'll keep that current. It also has all the policy sector team leads. And so everything you really need to know is in that one link that I just sent you. But in the meantime, I'm going to add the adopted district intake form. If you've not adopted your district, please do so. Here it is, adopt district. And Sally has a question about the poll for yourself, about the bills. You could fill out the poll as an individual, and you could fill out the poll as a group. And for that, of course, you need to make sure your group agrees with your filling it out. And various groups are working on that. And somebody actually has asked about a deadline. Indivisible Upper East or West Side, I forget, is reviewing the package. Other organizations that have to go through a more formal process are reviewing it. So that's fine. Obviously, this can be a rolling journey that we're all on. We're looking to launch in September, but that just is the beginning, really. So you want to walk through these bills with your organization, and either one you can do individuals or groups. People are asking which districts have been adopted. That's a great question. We have that list. I posted it in one of the previous general emails that I sent out, but we'll re-update that. And that list will not only have what's been adopted, but you can also still adopt a district that's been adopted. Don't worry, and then we'll get those folks coordinated. And it will also have the list of target districts that we want to adopt from the various groups that have suggested their top 10 targets. And ultimately at this stage of the game, we're looking to help these groups build their voting blocks, right? And if we could get all of these bills to 100 sponsors by the end of the year, that would be quite remarkable. And that would give, that would be strong footing going into the election, the process next year. Somebody's asking about reps who lost a primary. Obviously they're out of the equation. So you should target the person who won the primary. And don't worry about whether it's a Republican or Democratic district. We're going after all of them. And sometimes you get support and sometimes you weaken resistance. And there's going to be a lot of that going into next year because there's going to be a lot of resistance. And you never know who's going to step up on what front. And on the farm and food front there, and as I mentioned, People's Action earlier, there's a lot of inference and package and presenting this to traditionally conservative arenas because there are horrible things happening on the environmental front in everybody's district. So we don't know where the support's going to come from. Do we communicate with the present representative potential ones? You can also, if you feel like somebody's won a primary and you can contact candidates and elected officials. We weren't focusing on candidates because time is short, obviously, and that requires gearing up in a whole nother level of capacity. But if you're in a district where you think the candidate is going to win, it's great to reach out to them now and share with them the package. Who knows, maybe they'll give you a statement of support for the package. It's never too soon to start a conversation about this issue. And you build those relationships now, it's very valuable because they will remember who they knew before the election. And you can reach out to key members of your community who are actively working on various political campaigns and get it on their radar. If you know people who are, if you're getting emails from friends about particular candidates, email them back and say, we would love for your candidate to support this package of bills. And they'll run it by their policy teams. And now is the best time to get their attention, I can assure you that. Even though they're very busy, they're very interested in responding to your questions and concerns. And as people, we can't get into the political endorsement arena because we're avoiding that for everyone's 501c3 status. But you can lobby, and we'll have a presenter on how much lobbying you can actually do, but I wouldn't, so keep going at it first, particularly if you're a volunteer. But so we're not going to be endorsing, but if your candidate or your local elected official endorses the whole package, No, that's news you'll want to share around somehow. So you can figure that out hopefully on your own. There's questions about the Poor People's Campaign and Reverend Barber. We have been in touch with the Poor People's Campaign. Their report is part of the digest. And if you haven't yet, I encourage you to look at the environmental justice and just transition sections of the digest. And if you look at the documents there and hover over them, you'll see which ones come from which entities. And the Poor People's Campaign is well represented. And we've been in touch with them to follow up more officially. But as you may have noticed, there was a big march in DC for racial justice. And a lot of those groups were deeply engaged in that work. So our last question is, do we have a name for the package of bills? And no, we're just calling it the climate bill package for now.
Todd, could I just mention something?
Please.
You said Anthony was going to be calling in, right?
He doesn't know. He was having some technical issues, some electricity problems out in Nebraska. The wind knocked down the wires. So he was either going to call in or Zoom in.
Okay.
Maybe he's here by phone. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, someone's in here with just a phone number and I can't tell who they are and I can't chat with them.
Can you unmute them, or how are they?
Yeah,
Let me, if they're on the phone, they can't unmute themselves. So you're going to have to unmute them. You can only ask to unmute them.
Yeah.
1951. Anthony, if that's you, maybe send me an email to let me know, or try to unmute yourself. Does anyone know how to unmute from the phone? It used to be star something. All right, well, I'll let you try to connect with him while we keep going. Hit star 6 to unmute if you're on the phone, I'm getting. Thank you. So if that's you, Anthony, please unmute and let us know. It's wonderful. We have such a great group. There's 57 of us. We've been holding strong with all of this. Let's see. Okay. I've been talking so long. I'm just going to invite Corinna, if you could just say a few words so I can catch my breath about the faith organizing. And then we'll talk a little bit more about the next steps on the rollout. We have to invite Corinna to unmute.
Oh, sorry. I was just doing something in the kitchen listening. So apologies, not really prepared, but.
I know, I'm sorry. I haven't put you on the spot.
That's okay.
Okay.
No, that's okay. I'm really happy to see everybody. And I'm really happy that we're going to hear about the environmental justice for all bill shortly. And I want to thank Nancy Lawrence, who's on here as well, and is helping to convene people who from faith-based organizing backgrounds and those affiliated with faith communities that want to be helpful in this effort. So I might have asked Nancy to say something in a moment, but basically we're just going to have we've done a little bit of side conversations where we've reached out to some people who aren't already on this platform to sort of get the lay of the land and see if folks might want to join us on this platform and that kind of thing. And then we're going to have a call that's going to be on Wednesday, September 16th, 12 to 1:15. So that's next week. I work with a woman named Jeannie Cooper Newton, and she's available by email if people have questions, and she's sent out the Zoom link to people that had signed up for the call. So there's that, and we're really hopeful that we can, there'll be other venues to talk about, including this one. We've already stated some of the reasons why faith, religion, spirituality, ethics, morality is an important dimension of all of this to think seriously about, and there are strategic reasons to engage people directly from faith communities and organizations in this particular work and project. And then there are also some things that can come from that can really enrich and inform and galvanize the group as a whole, perhaps, in terms of how we're communicating about this bill package and the like. So I think that's what I have to say for now. And I don't know, maybe you want to take it away again, Todd, or maybe we want to turn it to Nancy to add anything.
Thank you so much, Corinna, for all of this. Nancy, if you're I know you're with us. I think I saw your name. Would you like to say a few words? Oh, hi, welcome. Make sure you're unmuted.
Okay, there we go. All right. Just to add a little bit, Kevin Collian is also on the call, and he and I are both part of the Metro New York Catholic Climate Movement. So we will outreach to the Catholic networks that we know are around the country. And also to IPL, which is Interfaith Power and Light, which is a really important network of people of different faiths that are concerned about climate change. I guess I'll just mention this because of the elections. There's something called the Environmental Voter Project. It would be very interesting to engage them in some way. They're nonpartisan, but they have found that, environmentalists or people who in some way have indicated that they're concerned about the environment do not vote in great numbers. And that was like pretty shocking to the founder of this project and also to me and probably to a lot of you on the call. So I think we might engage them in some kind of a discussion. They are really working hard to try to get people to vote. Just, tracking, telling people where to go vote, telling people when to go vote in all levels of elections. So it's an interesting project. And yeah, I think that if other people kind of know of people that should be part of this network that are people of faith, send them our way. Thank you.
Wonderful. And can somebody put Jeannie's email again in there, the main contact in the chat? Oh, this is so wonderful, Nancy. You guys have me so excited. I really, we're carrying a lot together. And every time I hear this kind of wonderful engagement, it just makes me feel great about what we're doing and hopeful and excited and like, okay, we can keep going. I saw on the faith list a few folks that I know personally who are not affiliated with faith groups, by the way. You know who you are. So maybe that's not the right team to be on if you're not part of an actual faith climate or related organization. They're trying to create that sector intentionally to get those like-minded folks working in collaboration.
But all are welcome, Todd.
But all are welcome, of course. At all of our meetings, everyone is welcome.
Yeah.
But I know that some of you have a lot of other things on your plate. So I'm always lobbying folks to focus because on that front, let's talk briefly about the policy sector teamwork, which is really where the focus issue has come into play. As you all know, we have a policy sector teams based on the digest sectors, which is essentially drawdown sectors. Those teams have been organizing and meeting. Rachel, good gal's with us. Maybe she could just, and I don't know if Christine is with us today, but Rachel, if you could just say a couple words. I know you've gotten the spreadsheet and the teams have met, and I listened to that video and it was quite great. I've added it to our list of documents. And the policy teams are essentially breaking down the House plan and the Senate plan and at this stage. And the goal is to get that work completed in the month of September so that by October, we can start report backs. So in these general meetings, we'll have each sector come in and present and saying what's good, bad, and missing in these reports. And that will start to give us a very clear picture of where we can add value over time, and particularly going into next year. And the what's missing, obviously, is the big piece of the puzzle, because once we can establish, oh, we have understanding and agreement on 80% of these things, and then there's 20% that's missing or needs more weight behind it, that will really help to clarify not only our work, but the work of the collective, more broadly. And then that information will be made publicly available. So those teams are hard at work. We need a couple leads in a couple sectors. And I don't know if Rachel Goodgal, if you could tell us about that.
Todd, Rachel seems to have gotten off, so.
Oh, she was on and then she got up? Okay, no worries. Well, we just need a couple more sector leads in those areas. And let's see, what else on that front? They're all going well. I know they're all met. We, on our core meetings, which are the first and third Monday of each month, we'll be having our core meeting at the beginning, and then those teams will have their breakout sessions in the second half of those meetings. And they're also having their own meetings. And they cover all the sectors that you're aware of. And then we also have the greenhouse policy team. And as you've probably seen in the past, that team is working a little differently. It is soliciting questions from everyone, all of us, and we'll put that link in the chat too. Here I will in a second. So if you have any questions about carbon pricing initiatives, essentially, and the carbon cap and trade ideas, questions, comments, etc., mostly questions, we encourage you to submit them into this form that's going into the chat right now, carbon questions, it says. And then those questions are being collected, and we're going to organize them, and then we're going to put them back out to everyone so everyone can answer as they choose to, and then we'll be collecting answers as a team, and we'll be inviting key organizations to give their input on them. So CCL, Citizens Climate Lobby, and other groups that have differing opinions will be invited to give us feedback. And then we'll have, at some point when one of our meetings, a longer discussion about that topic. And we'll have people on both sides of the issue come in and discuss it, answer all of our questions. And folks can decide where they land on that issue as we move forward. And so that's actually a model for us working on areas where there are policy disagreements. And hopefully this process that we come up with, and we have a great team, we have strong advocates on both sides of the equation, and everybody's getting along and working together. And so it's just a model for policy conflict resolution, really. And that's one of the underpinnings of this entire project, is to try to help us unite for greater political power despite policy disagreements that we have. And to identify those disagreements and try to work through them in advance of next year. Because the worst thing that could happen is that we go into next year and certain groups are, over here and certain groups are over there, and they're working at cross purposes or worse yet, just not working together on the things they agree on. And that's the trick, right? If we can work, and it's okay to work at cross purposes on policy angles on certain things, and there will be those disagreements. But if we could still work collectively on unified pushes and demanding a comprehensive bill as opposed to a segmented piecemeal approach, or knowing when we're all going to have in-person actions in our congressional offices nationwide to make sure that the climate agenda doesn't get lost in the other list of critical, life-threatening issues that we're focusing on as a country. So you understand the idea. There were some other questions I could try to answer. So yes, the links, they want more. Oh, somebody's putting information. Okay. Well, I'm worried increasingly that Anthony is going to be later than we thought. I have his phone number. Maybe I should try to call him, or somebody could call. He knows we're here waiting for him, so I don't know that we need to call him. All right, we'll see how this goes. If worse comes to worse, we'll have to reschedule. On the marketing front, oh yeah, hold on a second. Let me get his phone number to Giovanni. Here's his phone number, Giovanni. Look at this and try to call him. On the marketing front, that team is going great. And oh, I moved it away so you can't see it. There's a request from the marketing team for personal stories that you have that relate to any of the bills. And also, if you have already encountered videos, nicely produced works that describe the various issues, then we want to collect those and curate that a little bit. And who knows exactly what we're going to do with that material. We'll probably hand it over to the marketing firms that we hopefully enlist for support. But we have enough substantive capacity on our team to actually do some marketing material as well. So if you have those things on any of these topics, please send them our way. And you can send them to me or you can send them to Brenna. But if you just send them to me, that's fine for now. All right. Let's see. What else do we want to cover? Oh, another piece of this is outreach. And Carolyn, who's been with our team for quite a while, is going to be helping to work on outreach. And we're going to actually make that a more formal team. And the outreach committee will contact various organizations and networks. They'll reach out to, for example, the plastics bill has a list of 20, it has hundreds of groups that are behind it, but it has a list of like 25 that are on the main press release. And those groups are really a who's who of climate organizations. So the outreach team will reach out to them and share with them the climate bill package, ask them if they are interested in supporting all those bills. And that's sort of our way of gently networking the community together and bringing people into the fold. And we'll invite them, if they like the climate bill package, we'll invite them and explain to them the adopted district approach. And hopefully various groups will be adopting their own districts. And we're at that stage now where all the groups that we've been talking to have come, quite a way forward in terms of jointly being engaged. And we're at that next stage where they're looking at the bills themselves to co-sponsor or cross-support, endorse. And then, so we want to contact all the major environmental groups individually, reach out to their leadership team, and build those relationships and invite them into the fold. And it's partly to see where everyone stands on unity and to get us working across sectors. And then I have this idea in my mind, although I'm reluctant to commit to it at this stage, but I feel like it's necessary. I feel like in November, ideally we would have done this in November last year, but I think in November we could have a couple-day conference where we invite some of the major players to come forward and share with us what their thinking is and strategy is for next year. So be thinking about what groups that you're affiliated with or that you see that level of activity from that would be good partners for that. And if you're interested in helping to coordinate something like that, please reach out to me. I'm still on the fence about whether I want to commit to that kind of undertaking, but I do feel it's necessary. And everything that we're doing is out of necessity, trying to build infrastructure and capacity that I don't yet see. Let's see. All right, so there are other questions in here. I don't have anyone reading the questions. Are there any questions in the chat that anyone's following? Sally, I see you've been responding to some that we need to answer publicly. We're not looking at the Biden plan. We're not looking at the political plans just yet. That's a question. Oh, an environmental voter project. Good. If somebody could put a link to that environmental voter project in the chat, that would be helpful. We did a lot of environmental voter motivation in the last round, in 2018 rather, when we were focused on this. We can do some more this time. They just have to be nonpartisan. All right. Well, it's unusual to have a meeting with a star presenter and not have them here. I'm not sure anymore where we are on that front. It was going to be an hour meeting instead of an hour and a half in any event. So I don't know if we're going to have Anthony or not. Sending one last email. And I think, oh, the package rollout. So the last thing I'll mention why we're, and I was going to talk about all this after he spoke, of course, but is the rollout. So the idea is to roll that out this month. And so we'll have the email ready. We'll have a list of target. I'm going to post a list of new targets from Food and Water Watch in the chat as well. And you can start looking at those. If you've not adopted a district. So these are the top 10 for the fracking bill ban. Espaillat, Huffman, well, you can read them in the thing. I won't read them all. Pingree, which is one of the lead sponsors of some of the food and ag legislation. So that's a good list of targets. If anyone knows any of or lives in any of these districts or just wants to adopt a district, you don't have to live in the district to do it. Please let us know. I see Tara on the phone call, and I don't know if Meryl's here, but is anyone else on the adopted district team lead that would like to say hello and just introduce yourself so folks can put a face to the name? Tara, I invite you to unmute if you'd like to say hello, and we could.
Sure. Hi, I'm Tara. I will respond to your email slowly. Yeah, I'm excited about getting going with this. So
Great. And
hopefully we'll get everybody's, information lined up, and we will get information out to people about sort of step by step how to go about contacting your congressional, maybe not your congressperson themselves, but they're somebody on their staff, and how to meet with them and all of that. And I hope that we'll get some great meetings and do some great work with pushing this stuff forward.
thank you. So it's Tara, Meryl, and Paula who are leading, sort of co-coordinating the adopted district. So they'll be available to answer all your questions and walk you through the process, but it's very straightforward. The first step, as I mentioned, is looking at that vote count, figuring out which bills your representative has already sponsored, then calling their office and explaining that you're with a climate coalition, you're looking to get a package of bills co-sponsored, and you want the name and contact email for the legislative director. I'm seeing that somebody's saying they already have Jay Apollo in their on their list to contact, and they're meeting with their office next week. That's wonderful. These meetings can be over Zoom. You can show up in person if you'd like, but the real question is to get the legislative director's name and email, because those are the staff folks that will be reviewing the bills and deciding, and managing that whole process of sponsoring and reviewing. And so it'll be a very simple email, and then you just email them, and it really starts with that. You don't know until you ask. And I feel that, all these bills, a lot of it is that the groups behind them just haven't had the capacity to reach out as broadly as we're going to be able to reach out, which is the whole reason why we're doing this, is to increase capacity by being a multiplier, so that, we're not just going after one bill at a time, but we're going after 10 bills at a time. And you can understand, I think, the obvious multiplier effects of that approach. So I think since he's not here, I'm going to just touch briefly on these bills so you can get an idea of what they are. The Environmental Justice for All Act has a lot of environmental provisions. Let's see if I can pull this up fast enough to do this. Has a lot of environmental provisions that deal with sort of a full array of environmental injustices and problems, from water supplies and local pollutants, et cetera. So generally, those would not be necessarily directly climate related, but there's a provision in it that is a just transition provision for communities and workers that have been previously in the fossil fuel industry. And So that just transition provision makes it a very clearly relevant bill. And it's what the environmental justice community has been working on, and they've already filed that bill and has a number of sponsors. So it's in the vein of building solidarity with movements, and it's substantively on point in that specific regard. The Climate Equity Act, which again has not been filed, is very much on point. And that bill sets up a series of processes to make sure that environmental justice groups and frontline communities are included in the deliberative process at the federal government level and generally, so that as policies are being created, there's a clear seat at the table for those organizations. And I don't think there's anything that anyone would dislike in that bill. So I invite everyone to read what we've sent out in the last email about it. And over the next week, I'll send you out more detailed information so that you can review those bills. They've been created through a series of very long and inclusive processes. And that's critically important, not only for these bills, but also a lot of our other bills have gone through that journey as well. And that's, somebody's posting the bill in the chat. Thank you, Lavona. The process is as important as the content ultimately in a lot of these things, because that's where you build those solidarity to actually pass legislation. So those two bills have gone through an extensive process, and we'll hopefully hear more about that process in a future call. I think that's everything. I don't know that I can add much more to where we are, except to say thank you. I see people talking about the districts that we just listed in here. That's wonderful. I don't know if there are any other questions. Rachel, good gal, you're with us now, I hear.
I was on and now she's off again. Sorry, Todd.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's everything. Does anyone have any other questions you want to put in the chat? And if anyone has any deeper insights into other organizing along these lines that is happening, I know there's no other legislative bill package effort, or if there is one, it's awful quiet. But there are other collective organizing efforts. And I think we want to invite anyone who's doing that kind of thing to come and share that information. And then I just can't emphasize enough to please continue what everyone's already doing in wonderful ways. Your outreach to your local organizations and any group that you have a relationship to let them know. And once we have the climate bill package ready in the next week or so, there'll be a whole write-up about the bills and how they're interrelated and how they tackle various fronts and the package. And then we'll have a little social media stuff to go with that. And then that will be really the hook, I think, and the tool that the most useful in doing the networking and outreach that we're hoping to do. Because I can't emphasize enough that while what we're doing is, I think, exceptional and wonderful in its breadth and depth and commitment, it's still a small piece of the kind of effort that we are going to need to topple the most powerful interests in the world that have every intention of stopping us in our tracks. And the results of their efforts are quite clear. If you saw what they got in the bailouts, the COVID relief packages, they got billions of dollars in bailout. You see that the Democratic National Committee's platform did not even include the idea of ending subsidies to the fossil fuel industry. We have candidates saying that they are not going to oppose fracking on our side. So we are just beginning this fight. And often I've seen this happen in various movements, and I'll just talk about it since I'm killing a little more time to see if we get Anthony. The wonderful thing that has happened, and we pushed it to happen in 2018, was that the Democratic in Congress put serious, major effort into their committees and their reports and their analysis. And I cannot herald that enough. That is humongous progress. And as anyone who's been delving into all the various policy areas, they see how complex this is. This is not your average legislative battle because it touches on so many different arenas. And every single arena has its own complexity of tricky issues. But in doing this kind of thing, Congress does this often. It will create a table where it invites everyone individually to provide input, and then it establishes relationships with all those groups. And they use those relationships to try to control the conversation and the politics and the advocacy, because everyone wants to have that kind of access. But individually, our access might mean a lot to us and our groups, but it is not power. It will only be when we unite collectively on our demands, and we are an outside force that speaks with authority to the levers of power about these things, that we start to have real political power. And so I just encourage everyone who has an organization or is aware of organizations, like their legislative lobbyist has, great relationships with these Congress people and their staff, and these are part of their careers, and as part of the long-term, relationships that these organizations have with elected officials that they cherish, and they're important relationships. All those relationships get in the way of being a pushing, demanding activist. And so that's why we have to pull back and form coalitions that then provide cover for all the individual organizations. So the coalition can push harder, can be more demanding, can show up in offices and do things that individual groups, it might not feel comfortable doing or are just reluctant to do for all sorts of professional relationship reasons. So I just emphasize that because I'm afraid too often that everyone's like, okay, I'm talking to this Climate Crisis Select Committee. I have a direct line of relationship. They're taking our input. Oh, here we have Anthony. Hallelujah. And Anthony, you're here. Yay. Meryl's joining us. And so those individual relationships are wonderful and useful, but those will not be the relationships that force bolder, faster action. And so they are not a substitute for the kind of coalition that we're talking about needing and wanting and building. And with that said, Anthony, I'm going to invite you to unmute. I'm so glad you're here. I know you're busy. I was freaking out though, Anthony. I was freaking out in front of everybody. I think I deserve an award for killing a whole hour just talking off the top of my head.
No, I appreciate you so much, Todd, and everyone for their patience. As some of you know, there is a big piece of climate legislation being introduced tomorrow called the Thrive Agenda, which stands for Transform, Heal, and Renew by Investing in Vibrant Economies. As y'all know, in doing this work, there's always this soft and sometimes hard tension between Greens, EJ, and our sisters and brothers at Labor. It's a family thing, and sometimes two words like net zero can turn into a 1 hour conversation, but they're important conversations to have. So I'm really happy to be here with all of you. You're making me miss my hometown of New York City, which is where I'm from originally. So just quickly, I'm Anthony Rogers Wright. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm the policy coordinator and Green New Deal lead for the Climate Justice Alliance, which is an alliance of 65 plus grassroots frontline organizations throughout the country, including Indian country and the US colonies of Puerto Rico and Guam. Essentially, our mission is to furnish the climate community with the tools, the wisdom, and the organizing that is necessary to arrive at a regenerative economy through just transition, energy democracy, and food sovereignty. I'm honored to work for a majority women of color and women of color-led organization. It keeps me on my toes and keeps my patriarchy in check, which is something that all men need for the rest of their lives, because we've been programmed in this stuff. And so I'm here today to talk to you about two of, I think, the most important bills that have been released that are really going to, get us on the right footing for environmental justice. I mean, many of you are familiar with what we mean by environmental justice. If you're not as familiar, I would highly recommend that everyone read the 17 principles from the 1991 Principles of Environmental Justice. That's available on a website called EJNet. I'm sure you probably have it. Todd and all of you have compiled such an incredible panoply of the policies and the bills that we're all going to need as tools as we move forward. You know, and what we know is going to be a continuous fight for climate justice and environmental justice and just climate stewardship as it is. So again, thank you to all of you for your work. We have seen your compilation at CJA. We refer to it as policy people quite frequently, and we're really excited. You know,
all these things, man.
Yes, yes, all those things, yes, and we love them. So the two bills in question that I want to talk to you about is, of course, a bill that was released, gosh, it was only 5 months ago, but it feels like years ago, the Environmental Justice for All Act, which was co-sponsored by Chairman Raul Grijalva out of Arizona, who I'm happy to report to all of you is doing much better. He was recently diagnosed with COVID, and he's doing great. We were just on a call with him 2 days ago, and he looked healthy and strong and ready to keep fighting. And also, that was co-sponsored by Representative Bobby McKitchen, who's out of Virginia. And I think that the important thing about the Environmental Justice for All bill is that it really continues. So a lot of you have heard, hopefully, about the amazing victory that we had in Virginia with the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, which was scrapped because of a combination of incredible inside-outside activism, lawsuits from our friends Earth Justice and all the pipeline fighters on the ground. Dominion Energy decided, you know, enough. It'll cost us less money to just not do it. But prior to them pulling it, a federal judge did deny them a permit that was desperately needed for them to continue construction. And in the ruling, the judge said environmental justice is not just a box to be checked off. And I thought that applied, you know, writ large to our entire community. I really loved that statement. And I think that that was the impetus, you know, really of what the EJ for All bill was really trying to do. And what this, I would say the most important thing that this bill does is that it protects the National Environmental Policy Act, which all of you know is under massive attack by this administration and this Republican Senate. And the reason why NEPA is under so much attack is because it has always represented a vanguard for how we can stop, delay, or obfuscate, permits for these pipelines of death and other extractive projects. Trump, of course, has tried to roll it back, but what the EJ for All bill does is not only strengthens the environmental justice section and what's called an environmental impact statement, which is what they use to evaluate their projects, but NEPA, where it's different from its counterpart in California, the California Environmental Quality Act, is in the California Environmental Quality Act. If there is a adverse impact that has been determined in the analysis, that project cannot go forward until a mitigation, monitoring, and reporting program is developed. With NEPA, though, you could find a significant and adverse impact to a community and still build the project. This is basically what happened with the Dakota Access Pipeline, for instance. We knew there were going to be some impacts to cultural sites and just indigenous sovereignty writ large, but it was able to go through. EJ for All says, nope, like that project, if we find that there's an adverse, disproportionate impact to what we call environmental justice communities, though I will say that we are thinking of amending that bill because of the amazing work that a lot of you were a part of with the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which I'm happy to say to you has become really a beacon for how climate policy is written. You see even Joe Biden, who we can all agree may not be the most progressive candidate that some of us would have voted for, but when he's calling for 40% of investments to go to environmental justice in disadvantaged communities, that comes out of the work of New York that many of you were a part of. That comes right out of the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. McKitchen and Grijalva saw that act, we pushed for it, and they're also using that language. So protections of NEPA and bolstering the environmental justice analysis is huge. And that in itself is going to cause a lot of problems for people who want to try to situate their pollution and their extraction in communities of color, low wealth communities, poor white Appalachian communities, who we also, by the way, consider environmental justice communities. I would say that another part of the act that I really love is that what we're trying to do now, is everyone familiar with Executive Order 12898 from the Bill Clinton years? If you're not, just really quickly, Executive Order 12898, 1994, Bill Clinton signed it into, well, it's not law, but signed this executive order that directed all federal agencies to consider disproportionate impacts, to consider environmental racism in all of their projects, which has been very, very good, in terms of an end of the pipe solution for a lawsuit. However, with the EJ for All bill, we're trying to codify 12898 into law, and that's it, and to bolster it. I don't need to tell you, just the litany and myriad environmental rollbacks that this administration had. Right now, like 12898 is hanging by a thread. All Trump has to do is just rescind it. It doesn't need any congressional approval to do that. Doesn't, and we wouldn't even be able to sue him. That's how scary it is. The Supreme Court would probably not even take that case because every president has every right to rescind an executive order. That's what makes them, really effective on the one hand and also ineffective on the other, because they're not laws. Again, they're just directives. So we're trying to codify 12898 into law, which is going to offer vast protections for communities of color and especially indigenous communities throughout the country. And then I would just say, before I take some questions on this, before we move on to the Climate Equity Act, is that it just puts environmental justice, at the top of our discussion, at the top of our lexicon. We've seen, throughout this summer, whether it's attacks on Black men and women, on transgender people, on LGBTQIA people, that these are also the people who tend to also be impacted first and worst by the existing climate crisis and by existing environmental racism and degradation. And so it's just very, very important. What McKetchin said to me was that, the people who are being impacted the most need to form coalition. He says, I look for exercise empathy. So as a Black man who is cis, I know what my brother Todd has been through as an LGBTQIA man in New York City. And then our climate interest brings us even more together. These communities are so linked, and even though that they may not necessarily know it, this bill gives us something that we can all come get behind, together. So whether you're a poor white person in Appalachia, you're an LGBTQIA person even from California, who right now don't need to tell you, what's happening out there. Transgender people, of course, Native American, indigenous people. This bill allows us to all come together and really fly this banner of environmental justice. So it's not just a box to check off, but it's something that will need to be considered overall if you want a federal project to get any money. So I'm going to stop there and see if there are any questions before we move on to climate equity. And even if it's just a general question about climate and environmental justice, I'd be so happy to answer it as well. So I'll pause for like 5 minutes, and if there are no questions, I'll move right on.
All right, Anthony, I'm just going to ask, can you also, thank you, wonderful. This is so exciting. Could you just also mention the just transition provision of the Environmental Justice for All Act that helps communities and workers in the fossil fuel industry transition? I believe I saw that there, or was that in the Climate Equity Act?
That's in both, actually, and we're seeing more and more that just transition. You will see it included in what we're calling the Economic Recovery Plan as well, which will come out of the Thrive agenda. But what we're understanding right now, at one point this summer, my friends, I played a game on Facebook when oil prices. I said, find something in your house right now that is worth more than an oil stock. And I was able to find a clove of garlic, half a piece of chalk, and this pen. All three were worth more, and 2 beers were all worth more than oil and gas stocks. We also got the news last week or the week before that ExxonMobil, a global corporation that in 2014 was the most lucrative company in the world, just got kicked out of the Dow. And then on top of that, record breaking slashes in budgets from Shell, BP, Exxon, and then the smaller oil and gas companies, Whiting Corporation, Marathon, all filing for bankruptcy. So this is going to have a direct impact on obviously the fossil fuel workers and the communities that are dependent on these dollars, on these tax revenues for their schools, for their roads, for their libraries, for their parks. We certainly, as climate justice practitioners, love the workers. We are pro-union, even though we battle with our sisters and brothers in union. We also understand that like a transition away from fossil fuels is going to impact how people's livelihoods. We've seen a microcosm of that with coal. So what Just Transition says is that we're not going to leave those workers behind. As we shift to a renewable economy, we are going to bring them along with us and make sure that their health care is taken care of. We're going to make sure that their pensions are honored, and we're going to make sure that they have living wages as they are training, whether it's renewable energy jobs or whatever other job that they want to do, because we owe that to them. And then we're also going to make sure that the communities don't go under. Like we've seen what happens when these coal companies are done with communities in Kentucky and West Virginia. They go and they leave their destruction with them. And I'm not just talking about environmental destruction. We're also talking about destruction of the social fabric, right? We know what happens, especially with machismo men who drink a lot, who can't get employed and whatnot. It does increase domestic violence. It does increase violence against children and overall just, depression and emotional violence. So it was very important to Representative DeHalava, as well as to AOC and Senator Harris, that we do talk about just transition. It's to be honest, and some of you may know this, it is still a tricky term for our sisters and brothers in labor. They do feel, a lot of them have been given bad information. Just transition has been co-opted since the days of Tony Mazzocchi and Tom Goldtooth and Pamela Auti, who coined the phrase, and Jose Bravo, who created this tenet. It's been co-opted, unfortunately, by some of our big green friends, and we're trying to get that narrative back. So both of these bills, Todd, are very, very helpful in that, in such that we can center, this is what just transition is. If we just let workers go, we would say that that is just a transition, not just transition.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. This is very exciting. Now you guys are getting all to hear how excited I am. Every time I talk to Anthony, it's just like a wealth of information. He's so incredibly articulate about it, all the topics. You could dive into any policy area and you're going to get a wealth of information. All right, so we have about, we have about 15 minutes left. So let's go forward with the Climate Equity Act, and then we'll see how much time we have after you're done.
Oh, this is back to me. No questions then?
No,
okay.
We only have about 15 minutes left. So let's do your next part on the Climate Equity Act, and then we can see if we have time.
So the Climate Equity Act was introduced shortly before Senator Harris was tapped to be the running mate for Vice President Biden, and of course our sister in struggle from the Bronx, Representative Ocasio-Cortez, who I to any of you has been an ardent climate champion before she even went into Congress. The idea with this is that before any project is developed, it will get a climate equity score. So in other words, to determine, proactively if a particular project is going to have a disproportionate impact on a disadvantaged community of color, environmental justice community ahead of it being built. What is and what is not clear right now is what those metrics are going to be. And this is where y'all come in. Honestly, we need to make sure that it's our people who are developing the protocol and the methodology for determining what that climate equity score is going to be. And the other thing that hasn't been determined yet is that what the thresholds are for if you score between here and here, what happens. And if you score between here and here, that means that you have, proven that you're not going to have a disproportionate impact. But let's say you do have a really low score. What we're still working on, and there will be amendments, as there always are when things are introduced, is if you get a low climate equity score, does that give us the right to stop the project cold without having to refer to lawsuits? Because as you know, all the incredible work that Earth Justice and Greenpeace does as our lawyers, as the lawyers for the environment, as the lawyers for frontline communities, is that too often times the damage has already been done. And it's an end of the pipe solution. What I do love about the Climate Equity Act is that in addition to the actual project that's being proposed, it's also going to incorporate cumulative impacts. So how this will exacerbate what already exists, and that will have an impact on your overall climate equity score. it's taken the environmental policy world by storm. Biden is including it in his climate platform now. A network of big greens and enviros have a presidential memo, which, Todd, I promise I will send to you. I'm one day away from being able to send it to people I trust, so I'll send it to you, but just with the understanding of please keep it embargoed for now, because if the other side gets it, too early, what they'll do with it. But this climate equity score is seen as a major tool for proactive action against, harmful and extractive projects. What I do also want to say about this, because you're all policy people, is that sometimes we focus a lot on the outcome of the policy, right? The product that is presented to us. But something that the Climate Equity Act and the EJ for All bill both had in common was the process of developing that policy. And we like to say that, like, we're in this, we have to be in this as front lines, from policy development all the way through policy implementation, because as my mentor taught me, Elizabeth Yam Pierre, is that the road to bad policy is paved with good intentions. And if we don't have those good intentions of making sure that people are at the table immediately, sometimes, bad things happen when it gets implemented. It doesn't benefit the people who need those benefits first and most. So I think that just like, the top line of the Climate Equity Act is that also it holds the government accountable, and the government has the burden of proof that if a project gets a low equity score, the burden of proof is on the executive branch and the government to explain why it would still be okay to move forward with this project. What it does also is that, being that AOC, who is a natural organizer before she's a congresswoman, is that, like, this is an amazing organizing tool, because as we see the scores come out for any, given project, if we know that it has a low equity score, that gives us like real quick ability to mobilize, to organize, and to go against a given project. And while the government is, twiddling their thumbs trying to prove to us, no, it's okay, we're ready to go, and we have codification of why a particular project would increase climate emissions and decrease justice for the communities getting hit first and worse.
And what's exciting about this is that it requires the government to set up all of these processes internally. So there'll be a whole agency, as I recall reading the bill, whose job it is to make sure that all the other agencies take this into consideration and are watchdog on that process. And it'll be interagency as well. It's going to be so it'll be DOJ, Department of Ag, Interior, Commerce, Labor, to, as Todd said, that we're also making sure that, like, we're not taking away jobs, and that we're not, taking away income and resources from a given community. So I'm really excited about that too, Todd, that, like, again, we do a lot of work. All of you do a lot of work. This is tiring stuff. I can't believe how fresh Todd looks right now. I think it was that Tennessee air that you got recently, but this is really, really hard work. And what we're saying is that do your damn job. Government, it's like what you're supposed to be doing, and we're supposed to be checking on you and making sure you're doing your jobs. So Anthony, the CGA is not filed yet. We have a draft from 2019. And so I'm not sure if we can include a bill in the package that's not been filed yet, obviously. So, but I think everyone's going to be copacetic with including the Environmental Justice for All Act, which is already filed. That would be great. Is there any hope that we could get the House version at least? I know that the politics now on the Senate side with Harris is complicated, and it would be frankly easier if she didn't file the Senate version right now, at least until after the election, somebody else took the lead. But how about the House version? Any chance that could just get dropped in the next week and help us out here? We're having a discussion with Representative Ocasio-Cortez to talk about that. I mean, because it's not just those politics, Todd. There's a great bill that's bipartisan, as a matter of fact, that's ready to go, that I really think would get more workers to trust us more on just transition, the Reclaim Act, which is just a powerful tool for our coal mine sisters and brothers who, have been left behind. But the House Speaker is very squeamish right now about what gets introduced in an election year. She has basically said without shame she didn't want to bring the Reclaim Act to be introduced because it has bipartisan support, and she didn't want to give the GOP any victories whatsoever. But also we know that Ocasio-Cortez is not one to necessarily follow orders from the head of her caucus. So I think that the idea is, the Thrive Joint Resolution is being introduced tomorrow. And then, sort of like a set of these
bills that would bolster, right? Because the joint resolution is just a joint resolution. It's not law. It's not legislation. It's an opinion. So I would say to, buckle up, because I do think that Ocasio-Cortez is kind of sick of sitting on this, because a lot of work went into it, including work from frontline communities who want to see, okay, we did all this work, where's this going? And also trying to measure that with, of course, the bill's co-sponsor in the Senate, because, Ocasio-Cortez has a lot of affinity for Senator Harris as another woman of color in government, and certainly doesn't want to like blow that up in any way. So you hit the nail on the head, Todd. It's just a lot of internal Democrat politics going on right now, and I promise to give you an update. I'll send you some sort of like top line bulleted points from that meeting that's happening. I'm sorry, not tomorrow, Friday.
Well, if they could file, just drop it. It doesn't have to be AOC. Sometimes it's smarter if you really want something to happen, and this happens with my name back in the day, is if I took my name off of it and let less controversial people, shall we say, be point. I mean, that's a strategy that's very important when it comes to this kind of climate bills, because I was saying earlier in the introductions, we don't want the climate and saving the planet caught in the crosshairs of internal politics. And unfortunately, that's where things stand at the moment. But anyway, we have 5 minutes to go. We're not going to resolve all of this today. I have a tricky question. I'm not sure we can get into it or talk about it later, but it's crossed my mind. How will this NEPA review process and the environmental justice bill, how will that impact renewable energy projects?
Yeah, this is a very, very good question. I mean, any project that is going to receive federal funding is subject to this review. We're hearing a lot of discussions about everything from land use for the massive solar farms we want to build to, of course, migratory bird strikes from wind turbines, which is why we're seeing more of a push for offshore wind, where we can anticipate these potential bird strikes. I would say that I don't see as much of an adverse impact just yet, because, solar panels, they don't make a whole bunch of noise, and they don't require like massive extraction or digging, under the ground. But it is something that we are going to have to think about, especially when we start talking about getting the batteries in place that are going to store these energies for days like today, where it's not as sunny. It's not an easy question to answer. There's the Endangered Species Act that we always have to consider, which is a powerful bill. And of course, we're not going to try to weaken the ESA just to get wind turbines going. We don't want to get into a fight with our friends from the Audubon Society and whatnot. But I think that what we can say is that writ large, the aggregate damage that we're doing to land, air, and water is significantly less with renewable energy projects than they are with fossil fuel projects. And then the other thing is that the litany of abandoned wells that have been left, methane wells still leaking, we can seal those wells, we can remediate those wells, and then cover previously damaged land with either wind turbines or solar panels and whatnot. So, but I think it's an important question. And we're going to have to always be honest, because sometimes we will have to find other locations, for these. I mean, obviously we're never going to encroach on indigenous territory if that's not what they want. We believe firmly in free, prior, and informed consent for our indigenous sisters and brothers. But it's something that we're always going to have to look at. And a perfect example of this, Todd, is, the Block Island wind farm that was in a lot of controversy. John Kerry, as a matter of fact, actually was one of the opponents of it because it blocked his view. So there are aesthetic issues as well. But I mean, what I will say is that I'll take a view of solar wind panels over the view that many people in Northern California are witnessing right now.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. This is why I love, again, talking to Anthony. You can ask him anything. There's no hardball question that he's not already been thinking about. All right. Well, we're at the end of it. I don't know if you have any parting words, Anthony, for what you see as our vision of coming together collectively next year, and what you see this, how you see this unfolding. More importantly, from the civil society's perspective, how unified do you think we are, and how much more do we need to do to be ready for the fight of our lives next year?
Absolutely. Well, the first thing that I'll say is that like I've been very moved by the messages and what I've been observing from white people this entire summer as it pertains to massive police brutality and an overall system of patriarchy and white supremacy and colonization, which are the root causes of the climate crisis. So I want to thank all of you from the bottom of my heart for that, and leave you some words that our dear departed brother John Lewis said was keep it up. You know, we already are seeing that some attitudes, you know, towards race are fleeting back to where they were before Floyd's lynching and Breonna Taylor's assassination. And so like really keep it up, because racial justice and climate justice and environmental stewardship are intrinsically linked. There's an axiomatic nexus between those two mediums, and we cannot have one without the other. And I think just keep like learning and growing and getting uncomfortable with discomfort. We are humans. We are messy humans. We have to be messy humans because look at what we do with our time, you know, taking on the biggest challenge of a lifetime. And despite the losses, we still stick at it. You know, James Baldwin said like the types of challenges that make people sadistic, masochistic, suicidal, or all three. And I think that describes all of us like in this fight that we are in for our lives. So we're going to have uncomfortable discussions. But, you know, Climate Justice Alliance and our members are a resource for you. You have two in New York City who are the best in Uprose in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. And of course, our good brother, Eddie Batista with New York City Environmental Justice Alliance. They want to hear from you. They want to answer your questions so that y'all can be like the best activists and environmental justice practitioners as possible, because it just like women cannot solve and smash patriarchy and misogyny and sexism by themselves, right? As Jane Fonda says, it's going to take women and a few good men, you know, in that front. What we say in the climate justice, we can't do it without our white comrades. So it's going to take people of color and a few good white people to help us really overcome this climate catastrophe. I think that, like, you know, we know even with the Biden presidency, we're going to have to keep pushing, because we know what's at stake here. 1.5 degrees threshold is hanging in the balance, things that we may see in our lifetime. So please keep fighting for each other and stick with each other. You know, have your arguments, but always come back together, because this is heavy work. Please keep fighting for my 5-year-old, Zaire CLO. He's looking to all of you and starting to ask questions. Like, what are y'all doing about this? You know, like, and it's harder and harder to look them in the eye. And just like, I appreciate all of your interest. Todd knows how to get in touch with me. I'm very affable, gregarious, and approachable. So send emails, send text messages. If you can, send pizza from New York, because they don't know how to make pizza in Seattle. Like they don't know what the hell they're doing out here with that. And bagels. Oh my gosh, that's the other thing they don't know how to do either. The lox are very good because of the seafood, but what's the point of having good lox if you have crappy bagels? It doesn't.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the perfect note, really, for us. I just thank you so much, and for everything y'all are doing. Our team here, there's like only 44 of us now. There were like 50 earlier. It's usually 70. They're all over the country, and we're adopting districts all over the country. We have about 40 districts adopted that we're going to go after for the package. So I'll contact you again. We'd love a list of top 10 targets for the Environmental Justice Act. So we'll have that
CJA members in their respective states and cities and counties, because this is a local fight as well as it's a federal fight, Todd. So definitely.
Sure. And we want to connect your organizations to our adopted districts, which are run by Climate Reality people and Drawdown people and 350 chapters, so they can form many coalitions to go and get the package. And that way we have somebody, EJ, sitting at the table. We have the fracking ban sitting at the table. We have the plastics people. You know, we're trying to build that intra-issue, cross-issue, really, teams at the micro level. So we really have a force going into these offices, not only this year, but more importantly, next.
That's right. Awesome.
So, all right. Well, everybody, thank you all. I'm so excited. We're connected to good people. We really are. And so I think we're gearing up as well as we can, you know, as we can, but we're going to gear up even harder. And next year is going to be the most exciting year of our lives. So thank you all for being part of this and for sticking with it. And we'll see you on the next call, which is 2 weeks from today, every 2 weeks on Wednesday.
Question.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We can still ask questions.
Greenhouse gas group hanging out?
I'm sorry?
Is the greenhouse gas policy team staying on?
Oh, we had not decided to do that today, I don't think, because we had a short meeting on Monday, and that the work on that front is already going forward. But you can stay on for a minute and we can talk about it
Okay.
after we conclude. All right, thank you, everybody. Anthony, I had a mild heart attack today, but I still love you. Bye-bye, bye-bye. Bye, everyone.